much too complex, much too complex.
Welcome back to the Black Media Man Cave, where I do commentary and review on movies with an all-black cast or at least a black lead. When it comes to horror movies, there's always been a ton of choices to pick from. But when it comes to black horror movies, the choices have always been a little slim. Not to say that there hasn't ever been black horror movies, because even as far back as the blaxploitation era, we've had movies in the genre, but usually those movies were adaptations or variations on already established characters like Blackula. In the 90s, before the Scream era and its copycats, there was a small surge in black horror and psychological films with movies like Candyman, East Bayou, and Beloved. Black people were starting to get the spotlight in these films beyond being the first person to die right after the credits. One of the best films of this era, and one of my personal favorite movies, is 1995's Tales from the Hood. Tales from the Hood was directed by Rusty Cundiff, who I briefly showed in my video for School Days where he played Big Brother Chucky. After his first film, a comedy mockumentary called Fear of a Black Hat, Cundiff decided to try his hand at horror. He didn't want to make your basic run-of-the-mill horror movie with a generic monster, so he asked himself, what is it that actually scares black people? The answer was so obvious that it's kind of amazing that it wasn't already done before this movie. Nothing scares black folk more than everyday life issues. Things like gang violence, child abuse, and police brutality. At first glance, these things don't seem like they would translate well to a horror movie, which is probably why the marketing and trailers made it seem like this was more like a traditional horror movie than it actually was. I remember myself thinking that this movie was something totally different than it was when I finally saw it back in the day. It boasts a good cast of 90s movie and TV show staples like Joe Torre, Lamont Bentley, and David Alan Grier, but the one who completely steals the show is longtime actor Clarence Williams III, who delivers an out there but not too over-the-top performance as a funeral director. With all the themes the movie has to juggle, it could have been a little difficult to squeeze it into one coherent story, so Cundiff made the decision to make Tales from the Hood an anthology film, which is multiple different stories in one with an overarching narrative. It's not the first movie of its kind to do this, but it works perfectly here and makes sense in the context of the story. Tales from the Hood worked perfectly as a black anthology horror film in 1995, but does it still work the same 26 years later? Let's BlackTrack and find out. The movie begins with 3 random gang members pulling up to an old creepy funeral home. How do I know they're gangsters, you ask? Well, they look the part, that's why. Dickies? Check. Flannel button-up? Check. Bandana? That's a 10-4. Except for this one dude with the Kangol and the jumpsuit. Must have just moved from New York or something. The 3 friends are Bulldog, played by Samuel Monroe Jr., who I don't think has ever played a role where he wasn't a complete asshole. There's Stack, played by Joe Torre, who I'm happy to see gave up that weak-ass fade. And then there's Ball, played by DeAndre Barnes, who asks all the important questions.
Yeah, how am I supposed to kill someone who's already dead? That's like killing some shit twice, man.
Yeah, like some refried beans and some shit. Man, I never understood that, man. Why not just fry that shit right the first time and get up?
It's kind of crazy that this dude will go on to play Stacy in The Wood. They heard that it was snowing at this particular funeral home, but it ain't winter. These drug dealers are on the come up off some product they heard was found in the back. Yeah, because of course we all know most drug dealers carelessly discard hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of drugs where they could be found by anybody. And how did these particular drug dealers get the call about it and nobody else did? These are the questions you should be asking, Ball. The funeral director here is Mr. Sims, and I would have pieced out the moment I laid eyes on him. That's only because Clarence Williams III is just so creepy with it. He spends the whole movie smiling with that unintentionally disturbing gap and those wide eyes. He looks like TD Jake's evil older brother. Mr. Sims tells them that he has the drug stash deep in the building, but on the way, he wants to tell them about some of the bodies he has on display. The funniest aspect of all this is that he never actually says what kind of drugs they are. He just keeps calling them shit. Hey, these boys are better than me because I avoid funeral homes at all costs, and I damn sure wouldn't be this close to the dead bodies. Call me what you want. The first story that Sims tells is about a rookie cop named Clarence. He's learning the ropes from the worst possible trainers the city has to offer in Newton, Billy, and Strom here. I think it's his first day on the job and he's already learning profiling. Man, they don't waste any time. The truth is, the cops already know who this guy is because he's a popular politician in the city who's hard on corrupt cops. He's so popular that Clarence, being the only black man present and all, has to look him up to realize what he couldn't figure out at first glance.
This man's Martin Morehouse!
They already knew that. Why didn't you, brother? This story is all about police brutality, and it always makes me laugh when people talk about police brutality like it's a relatively new phenomenon. Movies and TV shows have been highlighting police misconduct forever. Clarence tries to help Martin Morehouse, but being a rookie and outnumbered 3-1, he has no choice but to leave and trust Strom and Billy to take Morehouse to the hospital. The thing about corrupt cops though, is that they can do whatever they want in most cases, because what are you gonna do? Call the cops? They decide that Martin Morehouse has to die right here, right now, and push him into a river after shooting him with drugs. The idea of black cops being overruled and basically ignored by their white counterparts goes all the way back to when blacks were first able to be cops, but couldn't arrest white people and do basic aspects of their job. And for anybody out there who might think, hey, Rusty Cundiff doesn't know anything about being a cop, his father actually was a cop and experienced many of the things that he decided to put into this movie firsthand. I guess the guilt of letting a beloved brother die while he did nothing really affected Clarence, but damn, it's only been 1 year. How you end up down bad like this? I laugh whenever a movie wants to show a character down and out, because they always put him in these raggedy studio apartments with a twin bed and one window. Just an observation. I don't know if it's the alcohol talking or not, but Clarence is starting to hear voices. Martin Moorehouse's voice, to be more specific. The voice gives vague instructions to Clarence to bring the corrupt cops to him, and Clarence interprets it to mean the cemetery. Even Clarence admits he doesn't know what's gonna happen, and he must have a death wish bringing these dudes here like this. Hey, well at least he's already in the right place when these cops decide to off him and keep him silent. If they were feeling themselves back then, you know they feeling themselves now, and Strom decides to add insult to death by peeing on Morehouse's grave. He even bullies Billy into taking part. He's nervous as hell. I wonder what he was expecting to happen. Whatever it is, I'm sure it was nowhere near what actually happens. This came out the same year as Vampire in Brooklyn, which had over double the budget, and Tales from the Hood still managed to produce a better looking heart. I don't know how I feel about Zombie Martin Morehouse. It comes out of left field, and he comes equipped with so many unexplained superpowers, like the ability to teleport like Jason, since apparently running is too much effort for a dead man. It's hilarious how effortlessly he picks these dudes off. What did he even need Clarence for? Strom gets his head pulled clean off, and honestly, I feel like he got off too easy. Poor Billy was clearly the weakest of the three, and he had his heart and possibly his nuts ripped out. Newton definitely suffers the weirdest fate though, and Rusty Cundiff said that this death was originally meant for Strom. This is where Morehouse's powers just go overboard. He chases Newton down an alley, and it's kinda funny that a drug-fused zombie pursuing a terrified cop is so commonplace that nobody reacts. Morehouse summons up needles from the ground and stabs Newton with them, with the last one going through his mouth and turning him into graffiti? Like I said, this death doesn't make a ton of sense. What would have made more sense to me is Martin Morehouse actually possessing Clarence and compelling him to do these kills. I think it's a better interpretation and still works if you substitute Clarence for Martin. Especially if you consider the fact that Clarence disappears during this entire section and only reappears talking to Martin as if he's talking to his own guilt. He's even blamed for the murders and thrown into an asylum.
Homicidal maniac, cop killer, 3 in 1 night.
You mean 2, right? Because there's no way they identified that third cop. According to Cundiff, the moral of the story is that at what point do you decide to do what's right before it's too late? I would say that story is my third favorite of the 4. The dealers move deeper into what seems like the world's biggest funeral home, while Mr. Sims opens another casket with a body we can't see and starts another story. This one features the little guy from Soul Food, whose name I just learned while researching this movie. It's Brandon Hammond, in case you cared. His name is Walter in this movie, and he's afraid of the boogeyman, or in this case a monster he says comes into his room at night. This story also stars the director Rusty Cundiff as a school teacher named Richard, who looks more like a university political science instructor who does spoken word in his free time to me. It's Walter's first day in class, and I swear the people in this movie have the worst first days because Walter gets mollywopped immediately by another student. What did he even do to deserve that ass whipping? He just got there. While getting checked in the nurse's office, they notice a black eye and assume that it couldn't possibly have come from the student he fought because it's too old. They ask all the right questions, but probably don't expect the answer they get.
Tyrone didn't hit you. Well, who did? Was it one of the other boys?
The monster.
If you can't tell by now, this story is about abuse, and I like the fact that early on, the monster is made to be a bit ambiguous. From the perspective and mind of a child, a monster could be anything, and unfortunately, people tend not to take kids at face value when they say these things. I think it's a brilliant setup for the story because, as Walter says,
He said no one would believe me.
It's particularly effective that we never really see this monster fully, and are left to guess whether Walter's imagination is exaggerating. The monster could be anything or anybody. Whatever it is, we know it's real though, because Walter keeps showing up with new bruises. To cope with his issues, Walter gets the idea from a classmate that he should draw the things he's afraid of on paper and destroy it, to destroy its power over him. It's a nice way to mentally give yourself confidence. Only in this universe, that kind of power can be dangerous in the hands of a child, because Walter draws his bully and balls it up, causing the bully to break every bone in his body and fall down a flight of stairs. God damn. The best part of this revelation is the diagnosis from this member of the singing group The Whispers here.
Boy must have had weak bones.
What are you trying to say? That he didn't drink enough milk? Maybe eat his Wheaties? Because I'm not sure that's how that works. Richard goes to have a talk with Walter's mom, and once he sees his Paula Jai Parker, he's looking like, hey, I have another monster we can discuss if you know what I mean. I've always liked Paula Jai Parker as an actress. I like how she could turn that hood persona she had in Friday and Don't Be a Menace on and off at will. Here she plays it pretty straight given the subject matter, and she's pretty convincing as a concerned parent. Richard tells her about the monster Walter has been talking about, and his mom kind of snaps on him about it. For a second, it could be assumed that his mother is the monster that's been abusing him, and I wish the movie had a little bit more time to lean more heavily into that possibility. But that theory is quickly thrown out of the window when another man shows up to the house. I love the camera work, and Rusty Cundiff said the camera angles were purposely from the perspective of Walter, putting the audience in his shoes. The guy is Walter's mom's boyfriend, I'm assuming. The movie never makes it clear. We don't know if it's his house and they moved in, he muscled his way into their home, or if she's remarried or something. What we do know is that he's played by constantly underrated actor David Alan Grier in one of his best roles ever, even if it is super short. Dude is terrifying in every scene with his stoic delivery and the way he just stares at Richard. He finds out about the picture that Walter drew and loses his mind. And it's here that we find out that Carl, as he's known in the movie, is actually the monster that's been abusing Walter. I like the transition effect from the shadow on the wall to the real Carl when he confronts Walter. Rusty Cundiff said originally David Alan Grier was supposed to be standing there in a full-on monster suit, but they couldn't get it ready in time. I'm glad they couldn't, because I think it just adds to the ambiguity of it all. What follows is a pretty disturbing scene that Rusty Cundiff said was originally supposed to go longer until the MPAA got a hold of it. I can't even imagine. I mean, it goes on long enough with Carl beating up everybody in the building single-handedly, like it's a WWE handicap match. The use of the belt in these scenes was on purpose to show that it's a thin line between discipline and abuse, especially in the black community. Walter has seen enough of the abuse and decides to take his friend's advice and destroy the photo of the monster. Amazingly, it works, and Walter doesn't even seem to be fazed by it working. Gotta take this power away from this dude ASAP. This is how villains are made. They decide to burn the paper and the body to hide the evidence, but how y'all gonna stop the house from burning down? Isn't that floor wood? This story about Walter and the monster is easily my favorite out of the four. I wish they had a little bit more time to dig deeper into who the monster really was, but I understand. I like to think that the monster itself wasn't really real, despite the creators insinuating that it was a literal monster. To me, the monster is just a way for kids to explain away what's happening to them when they're encouraged not to talk about their abuse. You would think seeing a body in this state would be enough for our favorite drug dealers to go ahead and take a rain check on these drugs, but they are so intrigued by every little stupid thing they see. It's like trying to get a child or a pet to focus. Ooh, what was that? The next story is my second favorite, and the one I think is the most timely of the stories in present day. Corbin Benson plays a politician who just happens to be a former Klan member. Even worse than that, he set up his campaign headquarters in an old slave house where the master killed all of his slaves rather than set them free. I think coming right out and saying that he's a Klan member is a little on the nose, because a politician today would do everything possible to hide that. I get it though. The director based this whole character on David Duke, the head of the Ku Klux Klan who actually did run for office at one point. That's why this character's name is Duke Metger. Like I said, on the nose. Being a former Klan member, Dude knows it's impossible to get the black vote, so that's why he hired a black campaign manager and image guy to tell him everything he needs to say. The campaign manager is played by Roger Smith, who was also in School Days as
Yoda,
which, by the way, was his first movie. It's like a G5G reunion. He also was in Poetic Justice, even though I didn't show him as much in my video. It's interesting watching him struggle with being black, but also rationalizing working with the racist for money. He knows it's wrong, but hey, how much is your integrity worth? It doesn't even bother either of them that the place is supposedly haunted and has a nearly ceiling to floor creepy mural of an old lady and some dolls. The story goes that this old hoodoo lady in the painting brought the house after all the slaves died and transferred all of their souls into little dolls. This is like one of those creepy Reddit posts where somebody goes, hey, I just bought this new house and I found a secret room behind one of the walls. Let me go check it out. No, just get rid of this thing. Duke isn't too concerned about that story because he said he searched all around and couldn't find a single doll, so he and his image guy go about their business. I'll tell you what I don't miss. Those old 1990s video cameras that took away your peripheral vision, because if old Duke here could see better, he might have been able to save his image guy from falling down the stairs. Oh wait, he died? All of this is so sudden. It's also a little off code for Duke to be looking all sad at the funeral, isn't it? I got a feeling if he wasn't running for governor, he wouldn't even have showed up to this. Is he mourning for his white side or something? I mean, it really seems to weigh heavy on his heart and everything. So much so that he watches the video back to see just what went wrong and catches something that his poor vision couldn't catch before. What is that anyway? Wait. Yo, I'm sorry to laugh, but look at it. Just look at how he has that little leg extended out so he could Catman the Image guy. You telling me that little leg is what tripped him up? What is he, like Ant-Man and maintains his mass despite his size? This is hilarious. With the realization that the doll is now missing from the painting, Duke now realizes that the ghost story is real. Who knows why Duke wouldn't just leave the house? Too stubborn? Too much pride, I guess. Instead, he stays there and all kinds of hijinks ensue, with Duke playing cat and mouse with the little guy. It's kind of slapstick horror comedy to be honest, but the good kind, like The Evil Dead. Corbin Benson plays it so over the top, and it's kind of funny seeing the goofy guy from the Major League movies be so super racist. I like how when he thinks he's got one of them, more and more start disappearing from the painting. My favorite moment is the slow camera pan when he locks himself in the room to reveal that all the dolls have left the painting. This is excellent cinematography. I remember when I first saw the scene, me and everybody in the room was like, oh shit. Originally, it was just supposed to fade out right here, revealing that Duke had hanged himself with the American flag overnight, kind of suggesting once again that it might have all been in his head, but those pesky test audiences hated it, and they decided to change it to him being eaten alive instead, which, admittedly, makes no sense. Hey, at least they did it as a practical effect. That gets points from me. Even the old lady takes a front row seat for the show. Fun fact, that old lady is the director Rusty Cundiff's mother, and the pastor at the funeral earlier was his father. Oh, he must be the favorite. Unsurprisingly, after that story, Mr. Sims has successfully tried our friendly neighborhood drug dealers' patience. They want to know where the work is at. Sims assures them that there is only one story left, and that they'll want to hear this one. Next up, in my opinion, is the worst of the 4 stories, and definitely my least favorite, but also ironically, the most necessary, as we'll see later. This one is about an irredeemable character named Crazy K. He's played by Lamont Bentley, and if you're used to him being the nice guy he was on Moesha, and boy have I got bad news for you. He seems like the type of guy who just goes around looking for trouble. Probably wears black Air Force Ones and everything. He runs up on the guy he had beef with and shoots him with no hesitation. Hey, it's Ricky Harris again. He stayed taking L's in these movies. Damn. Crazy K didn't learn a thing from Boys in the Hood because if he did, he would know that somebody always retaliates, and it didn't even take long for him. He gets gunned down by some of Ricky Harris's boys, and they got him dead to rights before the stealthiest cops in the world interrupt and kill his attackers in a gunfight. How the hell did they not notice all of them cops? It's like 36 of them. No way they pulled up on them that quietly. Somehow, Crazy K lives through his injuries and gets put in prison. He gets a second chance if he goes through a program designed to rehabilitate him. The program takes place in an area that's definitely not regulation. What is this, Castlevania? I like the design of it though. The place has a surreal dungeon look to it. The upside down bodies really set it off. As soon as Crazy K gets there, they place him next to a guy who's more racist than Duke Metger, if you can believe that. But if I'm being honest, the dude is dropping some knowledge on Crazy K.
Those guys you killed, what color were they? Huh?
I mean, that's not anything that Crazy K shouldn't have already known himself, but I guess they thought it would mean more coming from a white supremacist. But did it work? Hell no. When that doesn't work, they decide to do more extreme measures and hook him up to this machine that totally won't give you tetanus. Trust us, was it really necessary for Lamont Bentley to be nearly butt naked right here? There's a lot involved in hooking him into this thing, and it's not immediately obvious why all of this is necessary. This is worse than that machine in The Princess Bride. The machine starts showing Crazy K images that are one half old lynchings of black people and the other half film footage of people getting shot due to gang violence. The footage is real graphic, but for a reason. And believe it or not, this movie was the first time I ever saw images of public lynchings of black people. Changed my life a little bit. Seeing all that would thoroughly traumatize most men, but Crazy K isn't most men, and it has no effect on him until they put him in this totally not seizure-inducing room, filled with people he knew personally. I'm not even gonna play it in real time because there's no telling who's watching this video. Crazy K is showing a bunch of people that he shot, and crazy enough, no pun intended, a lot of the people are his friends. Do you think that made him change his mindset and repent?
I don't give a fuck about none of you stupid motherfuckers!
Hell no. After proving himself to be completely unfixable, Crazy K is released and immediately threatens to kill one of the attendants. Joke's on him though, these people ain't real. This has all been a dying dream of Crazy K. I guess to offer him redemption? But I don't know how that makes sense, because it's not like he would have lived even if he did show sympathy for his victims. That's part of the reason why I feel like this is the weakest of the 4 stories. The theme is so in your face and doesn't really address why Crazy K is the way he is. You can't fix violence with violence by somebody who's always been surrounded by violence. It's all he knows, so he's beyond desensitized to it. Honestly, that wasn't the point of that story anyway. The real point is that Bulldog, Stack, and Ball know who Crazy K is. I should rephrase that. They more than know him. they're the ones who killed him. When I first saw this on a 480p tube TV, it was nearly impossible to tell it was these guys before the face reveal, but watching it back in 1080p on a 4K TV, it was so obvious it was these guys before the Crazy K story even began. Yet another way that HD kinda ruins old movies. Faced with the prospect of Mr. Sims snitching on them, they demand he take them to the drugs to suffer the same fate as Crazy K. Sims takes them down into what looks like the basement, acting weird the whole way.
Got this old man crazy.
Woo! What the fuck is wrong with him? Shit.
Once again, at what point do you decide to just run? You can't be that down bad for these drugs. Sims finally tells them that he hid it in the coffins, and oh how convenient that it's exactly 3 of them. One for each of y'all, that's thoughtful. Our drug dealers open them up, only to be confronted with themselves. And man, who did the bodies? They sure got y'all looking like yourselves. Well, Ball and Stack anyway. Bulldogs didn't come out quite as well. It's like I said earlier, when you kill somebody, there's always retaliation. And that's exactly what happened to them after they killed Crazy K. Only they didn't know it all this time and have just been in limbo, I guess. I can't do it justice, so I'll let Mr. Sims explain it better than I can.
This ain't no funeral home. Welcome to hell. I ain't my brother, that ain't the word coming through that gap. There were quite a few hints that foreshadowed the truth leading up to this point. The biggest being the design of the place with the weird walls and the stained glass windows depicting red people falling. Then there was the fact that they kept descending deeper into the place until they ended up at the bottom. There was a blink and you'll miss it book of The Departed that Rusty Cundiff says had their names written in it. And then finally the fact that Mr. Sims stopped sweating more and more as time goes on, like he was getting hotter and hotter. It's all very clever and warrants a second watch. But hold up, does that mean that everybody from the stories is also in hell? And that's why their bodies are there? I can see everybody else, but Clarence is in hell? What exactly did Clarence do that was so wrong? Poor Clarence, man. Let's get to the grade. I feel confident saying that Tales from the Hood is not only the best black horror movie ever made, but it's also one of the best horror movies period. The decision to base the horror on real life fears was genius, and amazingly holds up to this day, which I don't know if that's good or bad. On one hand, it's kind of good that you can apply it to modern day events, but at the same time, it also means that many of the issues that the movie addresses hasn't been changed or fixed in 26 years. Despite all of that, Tales from the Hood is a well-acted and well-paced anthology movie that personally never gets old for me. Yeah, every single story isn't great, it's like 2 for 4, but taken as a whole, you can't be mad at the heart and energy that went into each scenario. Everything from each story having its own unique musical score, to some stories being left ambiguous enough to spark conversation around its lore. There's a reason that this movie is as popular as it is in any community, not just the black community. It probably didn't make as much money as was anticipated, but it was profitable, and I think the cultural impact alone was enough to make everybody involved happy about how it turned out. My grade for Tales from the Hood is an A-. If there's any movie that you're gonna watch for Halloween, Tales from the Hood should be high on the list. And that does it for this episode of The Black Track. Let me know what you thought about the movie Tales from the Hood in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Happy Halloween, and until next time, I'll holler at you.